Good morning. Really excited to be hosting this one today. This is a new webinar series that Cisilion has started. We've cleverly called it Cisco Unpacked, but
becoming closer and closer, and some even forecasting that the ability of the quantum computing in place, which should be able to focus at least on security, on crypto cracking, for example, will be as close as 2030, which reduces this timeline very, very, very rapidly. But for those who are in this particular field, they know probably very well how different most of the solutions nowadays are. They are using different type of qubits, and as a result, their interoperability between clusters is different. But it's also quite important to notice that most of the solutions nowadays are built in the assumption that they are all a single system. But we, from the history, also know that as soon as we build one, we probably want to connect it to another one to increase capacity and so on. And for that particular reason, that's when networking, quite natural element, which needs to be included into the overall solution, which hasn't been designed or developed up to now yet. And with Cisco prototype is kind of first attempt of doing that. They are not trying to do anything with qubits as such, but what they're focusing on interconnecting different systems which are using different encoding modalities, and as a result, to ensure that when the traffic is traversing these switches, the quantum state in process is not lost, is not destroyed, because that's the most important element. You need to keep the quantum state consistent between the elements, which is very, very difficult. But on the flip side, it's quite impressive looking to the numbers, what they're producing, how kind of fidelity of the encoding and decoding is happening with different modalities, how fast this switches, it produces the kind of sub-nanosecond traversal of the information, which kind of most of the modern switches are not doing anyways, very low power consumption and so on. So that's, yes, I would say, coming from very element of the networking, which we all love and know, wireless, to quantum networking, it's probably a huge leap. And for many us kind of bare mortals, it wouldn't touch us for many, many years. But we, again, never say never. We're all aware that from IT industry, that post-quantum encryption is a key already. People are already looking into that. They're already looking into cryptos, which are should sustain or kind of being resistant to quantum computation. And who knows, in the future, when the quantum will start being more propagated, particularly in the industries which are very dependent on this type of the systems, which is forecasting and some research, which AI as well helping. I do believe that it's important to see how the development is happening, and to see that even these, I would argue, the traditional vendors in the market, like Cisco Systems, which is having a huge market share in the traditional networking, it would like probably to protect it. They're not just sitting there and waiting for something. They are developing the new era of networking as well.
No, I agree. And I think, even talking about the concept of qubits over traditional bits is, it feels a long way away, but in reality, it's the important element there of that Cisco have long been known, obviously, as an infrastructure organization, but it's important that we see and understand that they are continuously innovating and driving the forward progression of those technologies, because ultimately, at one point, again, maybe it's going to be 2030, and maybe I'll hold you to that, Dennis, and we'll grab a beer if that does or doesn't come true by 2030. But point being is, at certainly some point, we will be thinking of our wireless infrastructures, our network infrastructures in a whole different light if that becomes the normal standard, and we're talking sub nanosecond, even hard to comprehend those speeds, in fairness. But
I hold you to the beer.
No problem. So, something more relevant though, which probably is something that everyone is still talking and thinking about, and you spoke briefly of AI there, and obviously we can't avoid not talking about it in this day and age, and naturally Cisco, that they're not an AI organization, so to speak. However, more importantly, they are the foundation for how AI works ultimately. And what I'm referring to there is, obviously, as we said, Cisco infrastructure company. In turn, what they're doing is powering those AI tools, right? That network connectivity is so critical to making that work. And Cisco talk of AI in a few different ways. I kind of think we should preface this first. So Cisco, when we think of AI, we've got just AI infrastructure, which is pretty much your traditional infrastructure, so to speak, designed slightly differently, a little bit faster, lower powered, but that's kind of infrastructure that's designed to be within your branches, your head offices. Ultimately, where they say it powers AI, it has the capability, and we'll come on to those differences between Cisco's infrastructure to other vendors there and why they can make the statement that they are AI powered infrastructure. The second part is AI data centers. Now, a data center is still a data center, and we could argue in many ways that a data center that has, say, one floor that is just loads of compute, high-speed infrastructure from a switching perspective, well, that's AI data center. Technically, it's probably a gray area on what the definition is for different co-locations, but really an AI-powered data center in the context, what Cisco's referring to is pretty much a data center built only for AI. It's not that you've taken one or two racks in that data center and you're doing AI. No, it is very much designed for optimization from a heating, cooling, power usage, and it only has large, incredible amounts of GPUs, CPUs, servers in there with lots of fast speed network connectivity. So that's kind of an AI powered data center. And then finally, something a little bit newer from Cisco, which is a secure AI factory, which is something they've been working on with NVIDIA. I suppose starting on the first one, which is how can Cisco make a claim that they've got the AI era infrastructure, right? A switch is a switch in many ways. So Dennis, from your perspective on that, what do you think is the differentiator that enables Cisco to kind of refer to themselves as that AI infrastructure company?
To be brutally honest, it's there is obviously a little bit of marketing in place, and I'm sure that the other vendors will also claim that they are powering AI data centers, which is true in many cases. But what we're saying, without a doubt, is what is important for the networking, which is again interconnecting all the clusters and servers with the GPUs into mega clusters within the infrastructure, is connectivity between these elements. And if we talk about compute side, and if we talk about the backend for the GPU side, there are different requirements. But what is particularly important on the GPU side is lossless Ethernet, as well as ability to provide a very good utilization of the links, usually very high speed, up to 800 gig per GPU, in order to ensure that communication between GPUs is very, very fast and very quick, because ultimately the cost of GPUs, that's where your costs vary. You want to ensure that you are utilizing this infrastructure as fully as possible. And that's where you probably remember already, it's not news, but at Cisco Live in Amsterdam in February, Cisco announced a new chipset they released, which they called Silicon One G300, which provides a huge capabilities up to 102 terabits per second switching chip to kind of power up new Nexus 9K and Cisco 8000 series platforms, which supports of 100% liquid cool designs and so on for the data centers, aiming to that. But also they did bring the intelligent collective networking feature, which allows to increase network utilization significantly, up to sometimes 20-25%, and it improves the job completion. And it also kind of, as a result, it allows to generate more tokens, so tokens becomes more efficient from GPU hardware. But this is kind of talking about the CPUs and GPUs, or CPUs and chipsets and elements which Cisco produces themselves. And we all know that Cisco was always focusing on their own chipsets as such, their own silicon. However, we also know that they did use the chipsets and silicon from Broadcom, for example, for their Nexus 3000 series, some merchant silicon, as it's called. Saying that, in this particular scenario, when they start talking about AI clusters and secure AI factory in particular, Cisco took an interesting approach. So they are not having only their own hardware for the Nexus platform, leveraging their own silicon. They also partnered with NVIDIA and used their Spectrum 6 Ethernet silicon switch, to switch Silicon to build a new Nexus 9100 series platform and switching with roughly the same capabilities, also about 102 terabits per second throughput on the chip. And that's combination of that and partnership, close partnership with NVIDIA as such, allowed Cisco to create this proposition, which they called, again, Secure AI Factory, which builds up two Cisco validated designs. One of them is based on Cisco Silicon One architecture called Cisco Cloud Reference Architecture. The other one is NVIDIA Cloud Partner Compliant Reference Architecture based on products from NVIDIA, as I mentioned, with the switch based on NVIDIA chipset, as well as obviously the GPUs coming from NVIDIA as such. So it provides the variety of options for the customers in this case. Are they happy with the approach Cisco gives them as a reference architecture based on their view and using their own silicon, or they are fully kind of on the journey with the NVIDIA, and that's what they're trying to achieve. But in both scenarios, they can build solutions as for large data centers, but more importantly, what we are seeing more probably interesting for organizations we are working with is how you can build smaller representation of edge sites. And when you do the data set, small deployments of AI clusters or AI available clusters for organizations which do require very short latency and low latency in order to process the AI messaging. And eventually it will be organizations like hospitals, warehouses, manufacturing plants, where that becomes very critical, where these type of deployments will happen. And getting the reference architecture designs, which are already pre-approved by the vendors in the solution, gives probably more comfort to the organizations in adopting these solutions as such, because in the end, it's all new for many organizations. We know that there are challenges, there are shortage of the skill sets as always, but when you're coming and someone is giving you that, not just a separate switch, separate server, separate GPUs, but all of that as approved architecture that simplifies the deployment and ultimately adoption.
100%. And I think on that point is, that edge use case of AI in particular, I think is so important. The speeds that you were referring to there, 100 terabits per second, etc. That dramatic amount of throughput. Why is that needed? Well, it depends on what kind of data set you're putting through and what kind of compute you want in terms of those large language models to interpret and understand it. But actually, the edge perspective, I think, is more exciting than anything else. And don't get me wrong, I'm not diminishing the fact that having lower power, lower heat is not critical, because it is. Token generation is really demanding. And actually, if you want to scale that out, finding those efficiencies is critical. And Cisco are leading from the front from that perspective and working with other partners like NVIDIA. But when you look at, for example, hospitals, retail, manufacturing, absolutely, as they start thinking about, well, how do we interpret the data we're taking in a retail circumstance, for instance, right? If I go into a store, I don't know, a large supermarket, and there's many available, but you choose one of the popular known supermarkets in the UK. If one of them want to start interpreting the hundreds and hundreds of transactions they have every few minutes in the very big ones, and they want to correlate, say, what I brought with my bananas today. Oh, it turns out bananas and coffee together is really popular. And that's a little hint there of what I like to start my day with. But what they'll need is that compute locally, because it would not be feasible in many ways from a connectivity perspective to then start sending all that data to a data center in all instances. Yes, you might still send some of it to that data center, but you're going to need that local compute capability first. And actually, in many ways, to start trialing this, right, again, from the conversations I'm having with organizations, no one's just randomly going, right, tomorrow or next month, our new project is we're going to build a whole new data center. We're just going all in, dive in the deep end with deploying AI, large language models, right? We've got our compute decided. Off we go. Let's see what it does for us. No, they've got to try it out first, right? They've got to find a use case that benefits the business from either productivity or customer experience or return on investment, and then they scale it out accordingly. And as you call out, Cisco's building that kind of full stack proposition there that you can feel comfortable that, yes, no one can predict the future, but you should feel very comfortable that your infrastructure investment is still protected. And if you're buying the latest Nexus switching, for example, then ultimately it's got the latest chipsets on. And yes, you might only play around with a little bit of AI now, or arguably you're just building out your infrastructure and you decide to use that. It's ready for when you are, or can scale out in accordance. So I think that's the key part.
Great.
And on the AI perspective, again, I think the most interesting conversation I do have in AI is where there is a practical, immediate use case. And look, every organization is different there. I'm certainly not saying AI doesn't have practical uses, but the one that I find typically is the first immediate, like you can see a real return on investment straight away, or you can see an immediate improvement in customer experience, is contact center as a solution there from an AI perspective. Obviously, I know your team in particular, Dennis, spend a lot of time demoing, proving the value and use cases of this. From discussions you and your team have been involved in, is there a particular reason, or firstly, do you agree that you see contact center and customer experience as a practical use case immediately? And if you do, where are you seeing those kind of conversations and the value being found?
Certainly. And I would agree that, excuse me, what's happening with my voice today?
So, right.
Probably pollen is starting, we're in springtime. The view our kind of experience we are having that with different technologies and AI particularly, it shows us that yes, CX or user experience, customer experience, which is predominantly driven by the contact center applications as such, and Cisco WebEx Contact Center is one of them, which is in our portfolio. It's quite interesting to notice that not me, but some clever person said that LLM kind of improves the performance. Agentic AI or agents change the outcome. And that's very important to notice because by nature, the contact center is filled in with agents. Up to now, predominantly human agents. And I do need to stress from the beginning, we are not saying that agents being replaced by AI. We're only seeing that AI becomes a very valuable tool for this agent to be more efficient, more effective, and provide better experience to the end customer. And why it's important, because agents which can be augmenting human agents within the contact center solutions, they can do multiple jobs. They can listen, they can decide, they can act, they can help. There are many very, very tangible elements which helps to improve the user experience or customer experience as such. If we just consider a couple of use cases where Cisco believes that using AI agents in the contact center environment becomes very, very beneficial. One of them is, for example, they call it intelligent front door. What it does, it allows the collaboration or communication interaction with the customer starts from the very beginning, and it's starting in the front. So it's not on the back end where AI is crunching data, it's on the front where simple services requests can be fulfilled or status updates can be provided, and all in natural conversational method as people used to when they talk to the human agents, and can be done over different modalities. It could be over voice, it could be over chats, it could be over different methods of communication. You can book appointment, you can do rescheduling, and for that you don't need the human agents. But what's important as well, when you do this have intelligent front door capabilities, even if we kick in with the agent, we should have the ability of the very smooth transition and hand off to the human agent when it's needed in the conversation. So as I said, it's not about replacing people. We are looking into making the incoming kind of front door for the organization smarter, so customers are getting better experience as such. Another interesting solution, for example, is how AI assists human agents during live conversation. Because of the capabilities of modern AI infrastructure, they can in real time do the transcription. They can provide some suggestions on the next actions. They can surface the knowledge to the agent in front of them based on the conversation, what's happening. They can listen to the customer and see the sentiment of the customer, how they react, and adjust their suggestions as well based on that. And we all been probably in the calls where we've been asked by technical personnel to go through the repowering our CPU devices when the internet doesn't work. But if the smarter elements at the beginning start analyzing what customer is telling the agent, and you can see that the customer already went through certain steps. You don't need to repeat it. You don't need to frustrate the customer. You need to focus on the fundamentals and maybe again resolve the cases faster. Ability to provide supported after-call activities. Contact centers are very important for capturing data or capturing information about the customer and what they're doing and how they're doing. And from that perspective, we all know that after each and every call, there is time to close the call, to after-call work. AI agents can help with that as well. They can do all the summaries, they can do actions, they can populate the forms within this, and they can do this at a very, very efficient method. So it doesn't kind of create additional boredom for the human agents to fill in this information and provide faster wrap-ups of the calls. So that's why I think that enablement of AI agents within the contact center infrastructure is very, very powerful.
No, I agree. I completely agree. And I think out of all of the AI use cases, again, it's the most practical that can immediately provide value. And while we love infrastructure, it doesn't involve you rebuilding your whole network infrastructure or setting up a new data center location for it, because you're relying on effectively Cisco's cloud or their data center environment. So it can be very easily spun up, trialed, tested, value proven, and then go live very simply. Slightly conscious of time on our side, we've slightly overrun in our excitement on all the recent announcements
Or the
and
quantum
what we're
networking.
seeing there. I mean, it's still exciting. I would argue that. With that in mind, I think just as a quick rundown and as a summary in terms of what can be done in some of these areas, I'll kick off with wireless. Look, it is something that is a hot topic right now. There's various key drivers causing that, and certainly Cisco's research and their report that Dennis mentioned that was released early April highlights that. From our perspective, is quite simple. It's something we do day in and day out, and we'll be happy to help you in terms of conversation. That is not just the product, aka you need potentially newer APs. That's fine. In some cases, you might already have the appropriate APs, and it's a design consideration, RF design. So something that we look at very frequently, help optimize and drive that efficiency for the best outcome there. From a AI infrastructure, Dennis, from your perspective, what can customers do immediately in that space?
I think it's more obviously kind of monitoring and seeing what's happening on the market. If you are on a journey with the building up your own applications or augmenting your applications with AI capabilities, we are seeing that many organizations initially are starting their journey with experimenting and building stuff in the public clouds, for example, solutions. But when it comes to the running applications, where the cost consistency is very important and predictability of the cost is very important, that's where bringing in your own clusters of the networking infrastructure as well as compute and GPU infrastructure is becoming very, very important, because again, it provides this predictability of the cost of the token generation rather than relying on the constantly increasing demand of the tokens, as many organizations are facing that at the moment.
Agreed. And finally, with the kind of customer experience element or contact center is traditionally known as, that's something again that it's a very easy thought process. Firstly, there's two ways. It might be external facing. Okay, you need to provide customer experience or way to deal with escalations or contact from your customers to you. And then there's also an internal perspective. Sometimes that's a HR use case for more global organizations where maybe you've got EMEA, US region, APAC, etc. Now, how you handle those internal communications all begins with use cases, all understanding firstly how you're handling those queries, how you drive that experience, that journey end to end now, and then how you refine on that to introduce potentially AI agents in a light touch perhaps initially, to drive investment improvements in terms of better experience, lower, quicker response time, more consistent communication across different channels, whether that be WhatsApp, web queries, your phone calls. So it's about linking that all together to help define a very nice new journey that ultimately improves that experience. Again, something that we do day in and day out, and be delighted to have a look at with you. With that in mind, that was our first Cisco Unpacked webinar. Again, apologies, we went slightly over. This was our first one, and I'm sure you'll find our future ones, myself and Dennis, refine that timing a little bit better. But we thank you all so much for your time, and we look forward to speaking to you again soon.
Thank you.